Hi, I'm Dave Stodder. I'm Director of Research for Business Intelligence with TDWI, and we're here in San Diego at our World Conference and BI Executive Summit. And with me is Paul Barth, who is with NewVantage Partners and has been in the analytics, data mining, data warehousing industry for quite some time with thinking machines, Tesseract. And you did some work with American Express. And so it's really great to have you here, Paul.
Thank you.
And Paul keynoted our conference today, and so he had a chance to talk to our attendees about big data, how to get value from it, what it means for data warehousing, and what a lot of the folks here are concerned with. And so a lot of interesting points were made. Paul, maybe you could just talk a little bit. One of your concepts was time to value, TTA, which was really a hit, and I could tell people were really registering with that.
Great.
You talk about that a little bit and just some.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Dave. And I've really enjoyed the conference. Great participation, interaction. And I was recalling that I think I was at one of the inaugural TDWI conferences, 20 years ago or so. And that at that time, data warehousing was a new concept. And what could we do with all this data? How could we bring it together and make it more useful? And what I talked about today was the impact of big data technologies and how they're applied to enterprise data in commercial businesses, banks, healthcare providers, retailers, et cetera. And what we have found in the work we've been doing is that the technology itself for big data is not only good for social media and advanced analytics, it's actually good for just helping you deal with accessing and aggregating your data and making it accessible for your business. And that's just consistently been a challenge. And as we looked at how do you explain this to the business and how do you measure it, we came up with this metric, time to answer. Some people call time to value, time to insight, but the idea is that the speed with which you can go from a business question or an insight that something you'd like to understand better and get your first answer and then iterate in your second and third is fundamental to becoming competitive with analytics. And I think that's always been our goal with data warehousing, but the engineering required to build a data warehouse and model all the data and incorporate and harmonize all the data and then get the analytics standardized, it has become real bottleneck in companies, and big data is offering some solutions.
Yep. And that was the theme of our executive summit, was really about agility and how to get that time to answer, reduce the time, reduce the latency. So that was a big topic at our conference. And so we did have a lot of folks there who were dealing with data warehouses, and I could tell they were very interested in the different kind of architecture you were offering. And one of the things you talked about was these bronze, silver, and gold kind of level systems. And we don't have a lot of time to talk about it here, but maybe you could just explain a little bit what that means.
Well, it really came from some client work we did over the last few years where it was obvious from their requirements they wanted some of the big data capabilities. The requirement was to have access by experts to some of the raw data coming out of their operational data, almost on demand, not real time, but keeping a store of that data up to date and accessible and not having to go and build extract programs and build an ODS and a data warehouse every time they needed new data sources, but to have it all in one repository. And what I was trying to explain was you might have it in one place, but that doesn't mean it's usable by everybody. In fact, I think a lot of the hype around big data is this statement that, you can just have it all, just put it in one place and you don't have to worry about all the data warehousing work. Well, in fact, if you want really useful, well-integrated, harmonized data that you can trust implicitly and has a lot of automation, you need to do a lot of engineering. But what we discovered was these expert users could get value from that data before it was fully engineered. And I had to explain this somehow. And I said, this is going to be a hybrid architecture with a big data platform that's storing the information, the raw data, but hasn't harmonized it, hasn't modeled it, gotten all the key structures right. But it's still useful, but there's steps. And I said, consider the raw data bronze data. And that's the raw data. What you know about it is it came from operational systems, so there's system of record characteristics to it, and it's complete. We didn't filter data out on the way. But what's useful is what we call silver data. When you pull out the records and you massage them a little bit, that's what an analyst would do typically. If they're trying to build a model, they'd massage the data for their purposes. And so that's ready to use, ready to analyze. But the gold layer is where you say, I'm going to look across systems, come up with master key structures, harmonize, get customer masters, et cetera. Well, that takes months and months of work per subject area to do that if you haven't done it before. And so we call that gold. And the nice thing is you recognize that bronze isn't as valuable as silver, silver not as gold, but there is value in silver. The value is time to answer, that the analyst can get at the data and start working with it, and they'll have to do a little bit of the engineering. While long-term, you may build out that gold layer for broader use.
So Hadoop, now which of those layers would be the Hadoop layer typically?
In the architecture we've worked with so far, bronze and silver are Hadoop and the components of its ecosystem. So HDFS is a very powerful parallel file system. It has some raw access layers like MapReduce, but they also have friendlier packages like Pig and Hive and HBase. And coming down the road are Impala and other very high performance databases that give you some of the SQL access with extensions for analytics. And it's growing in what you can do. There are companies out there, and Sears will talk about it, that they build a gold layer in Hadoop, in HDFS. And they say it's gold, meaning it's trusted and it's been conformed and cleaned up. But the other thing they'll say is it's not normalized, that most of their consumers want denormalized data sets. And I'd say that's kind of an extreme. Most of my clients want to distribute the data through a relational schema and build out that gold layer on more traditional platforms. But in many times it is accessing the data on that HDFS or sourcing it through that bronze and silver to get there.
Well, maybe just in closing, if you could give us maybe a couple points. You know, if you're an organization that's sitting on data warehouses, you've got quite an investment there, but you're looking at big data, you know, trying to figure out how you can get something from it, whether, you know, what its relationship is going to be to your data warehouse. I mean, what would be kind of a couple points you'd make there?
Well, we always look at the data architecture in its entirety, and a data warehouse has always been a piece of that. ODSs grew out of the data warehousing recognition that there were some gaps in that. And now what I'd say is there are further data assets, either internal or external, that the business would find useful. So first of all, identifying the business value. And then, in my view, it's been helpful to say, what would it mean to the business to get access to that data, be able to answer questions or just deliver the data 10 times faster, 100 times faster with complete data sets, and then let that drive the potential incorporation of big data and not let big data as a technology drive the process. I don't think it's here to displace data warehousing. I think, you know, with the idea of bronze, silver, and gold, there's a role and a reason for all of them. But I like to measure the benefit by something real and tangible, like a process acceleration with time to answer, and even how that affects revenue, service, quality, et cetera, other business dimensions.
Yeah, well, it's good stuff.
Great.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. So we've been here with Paul Barth, and I'm Dave Stodder, and thank you very much.